I drop bombs with it, they be loud. They all watch, take a knee to the crown. Yeah, I'm the wolf, you the hoodie now. So take cover, little baby, work it out. I'm loud, loud. Put my face in the middle of the crowd. Say I'm loud, loud. I'm going down in history town. Yeah, I got braces, worked at Macy's, put my money different places. Kiss the babies, kill the maybes, alright, so good. Nothing wrong within it, just a bitch to finish. We got stacks, we no limit now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bombs with it, baby, loud. They all watch, take a knee to the crown. Yeah, I'm the wolf, you the hoodie now. So take cover, little baby, work it out. I'm loud, loud. Put my face in the middle of the crowd. Say I'm loud.
Hello, who's here? Sorry about that little hiccup we had there at the beginning. We were live for so long and I just couldn't get stuff to like load up, but we look like we're good now. And I hope I've at least got a couple folks hanging out.
Girl, don't you know you're beautiful? Don't let the world turn you into something usual. It's okay. We gonna do this our way. La 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 la. Tell me who says you ain't pretty, boo? And just because they said it doesn't really make it true. I'm into doing me, girl. You should be doing you. Fuck them folks on Instagram without them filters. They ain't cute. Get in the mirror, pop your lips while you flip your hair.
Oh, JJ, hi. I'm glad you like it. I don't know, I was just feeling kind of dark today. Gloomy outside. I have been having one of those weekends also. So, just...
Girl, don't you know you're beautiful? Don't let the world turn you into something usual. It's okay.
But I'm ready to come and be here and hang out with everyone and read more book.
Girl, don't you know you're beautiful?
This Wednesday was wild. Oh my god. So difficult to get through. Very spicy.
We gonna do this our way. La 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 la.
All right, so I'm planning today to try to get through to chapter 59 because we're starting on 56. Just to sort of keep us a little closer to the schedule I'd originally worked out, but we really have to play with it because I don't know anymore. All I know is that I don't want to have to do another 3-hour emergency Monday night stream because that was just not cool. And oh, Mimi, what do you want? She's so mad I'm on stream right now.
Thought you had me. Thought that you could break me down. Guess you didn't get the memo. Guess you didn't ask around. Winnings in my
Felt better.
DNA. Head too high to drop the crown. It's only room for one queen bee. You run your mouth, I'll run this town. Don't try to
But yeah, it's just been a lazy Sunday here. How has everybody else's weekend been?
hope your side chick got
I hope good.
no time for crying, cause I'm laughing my way to the bank. Bad people never die. We just reincarnate. Your bags at the club. You can even take the pain. Middle finger to the sky. All my ladies help me say.
Well, lazy for me, except for I did have to do some like angry detective work this morning. I'm just gonna say this because I mean, like, whatever. But so I found out that some more of my family's shenanigans have been going on. One particular member of my family who I regularly complain about. So, oh, finally sunny. Oh, that's so good. I'm glad that it's nice there. But essentially, I had to do a little report on some not so savory things that they were getting up to. That's all I'll say because I don't want to get in more shit because I always get in shit with them. I told on him. So I compiled a bunch of evidence and then did a tell on him. Okay, if you don't want to get told on, don't do the bad thing. Right? That's something like, I mean, unless we're committing a crime together, don't do bad stuff around me, because I will tell on you. Unless it's part of the very narrow form of disobedience that I'm okay with, I'm gonna tell on you. That'll do. Yeah, it sucks. It's icky. It's not fun. They're basically like using the fact that they used to be a journalist, an actual journalist, to now create news that is not real news, and spout misinformation and put it out there and a bunch of bad political things. And I was like, that's not cool. Don't like that. So I'm gonna tell on you. Yeah, right, Jadeg? Oh god. Yeah, it's yucky. It's yucky, but there's this really great group here, and this I can talk about, called the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. That's like a group of like journalists and activists and people that are just generally not down with like all of the intense right-wing rhetoric that is a lot more intense in Canada than people really think it is. And what you can do is they don't run like a volunteer program, but you can like submit information to them and like help them with like monitoring different groups and different people that do things that are harmful. And basically all they do is they just like report on stuff and keep the information out there and make sure people are aware of like all of the bad stuff that people do. Their whole mandate is that they work like entirely within the law to try and like expose and discredit groups that are not good. So I compiled all the research that I did and I sent it off to them, and I basically said like, I am not going to protect or make excuses for this person anymore. They should know better. And if you want to talk to me or talk to anybody else about it, I will do that privately, and that's fine. But I was like, at the same time, this is also extremely personal for me, so I can't be like the one to write the article or like, you know, anything like that, because I will come off like way super biased. But I can submit information and let them make a call. Oh, thanks, Jiggy. Yeah, like Americans are learning that with the truckers, and part of what like really sparked it is that I found out this person is down in Ottawa again because they're going back now. Not the truckers this time. This time it's bikers. Like what? But he's like, I apparently followed the truckers the first time, and I didn't know that because I try to just avoid it anymore because I don't want to fight. Right? I get sick of it. But found out, and then they're going down there and they're doing live streams from the fucking biker rally. They're calling it like the freedom fighters and shit. I'm like, oh my god. Anyway, it was stupid. It was so dumb. But yeah, I found that out and I was like, I just can't. And then especially with the mood I'm in, because like, the way that I am, I'll just trauma dump on you guys while I wait for some more folks to get here. So you may remember that a little while ago, my grandmother was trying to go through the process of ending her life, which the family and myself feel she's doing for the wrong reasons. She is not, like, she's ill, but she's not like permanently forever disabled ill. She's got chronic pain, but it's not unmanageable. Like, it's that sort of thing where she's like just in this gray area and we're just not sure that she's doing it for the reasons. We think she's just really depressed, honestly. But she had gotten denied originally, and the process is set up in a way where now she can appeal it. And so she went and she appealed it. She got another doctor to give her a second yes. So now she is going forward with it. She hasn't set a date or anything yet. But we found all of that out. Yeah, I found this out yesterday, and my mother found out the day before. And so we're all very, like, upset right now. And then I find out that, while this is going on, the family member is doing this at the same time, when they really should be involved in what's happening here. And not worried about that. But they aren't. So I was like, no, I can't. I can't. Like, let's just put all of my feelings and my anger into this potentially positive thing. But yeah. It's not good. But I love my Nana, and if what she needs is this, then what she needs is this, and we have to all work on this on our own, and I am still not sure how I feel, and all of those things about her situation. So, yeah, Jadeg, it's tricky. It's, you know, I'm just trying to be as pragmatic about it as I can, and, you know, try to see things from her perspective and not make any intense calls. Like, I don't want to be angry, right? So that's what we are. But yeah, I don't know where everybody is today. But even if I just got you, Jedek, I got you, Jedek. That's okay. Folks are just busy on this Sunday, I suppose. First of the month. Shit to do. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna start reading. I'm just gonna get us going here, because I would love to read some more chapters and see where we go. So if more people pop in, they do, and they don't, they don't, and they can catch up on the VOD later. But then for our VOD viewers, this is just to remind you that I am also doing a fundraiser currently for the big Nashville trip this June to go to LPN Fest, which is what I'm calling it, the LPN Jamboree. We are potentially doing a Friday night Jackin' with the Holdies, which I am actively trying to help get off the ground. So it is very important that I get there. So if you want to donate, you can go to bit.ly/Dottie Dono, or the link will come up in chat. If you put in $25 or more, you will also receive a signed pinup photo of myself. If you're curious about some of those selections, you can go to dottiechampagne.ca now, which is my website where I try to update stuff on there, but it's not a very good site. But I do have a shop page now that has some of the photos that are available. You can purchase those independently if you'd like, but the best way to have this counted as a donation is to have it up there and do it through the donations, and then I can set things up for you. It also saves you any tax or any extra thingies like that, and I'll just send it off to you. But yeah, there are some photos posted there that you can choose from, and then there's also a larger selection if you contact me privately after the fact. So yeah, definitely donate at bit.ly/Dottie Dono, $25 or more for a signed pinup photo. Less than that is always appreciated too, though, so don't feel obligated to just do that amount. And that'll get me off to Nashville for a trip. where I will hopefully get to do some performing, as well as some other things. And I hope that that link just came up the way I wanted it to, so people can see it. Cool. All right. But in the meantime, let's go on to chapter 56, where, if we remember, the previous chapter was just all Feyre and Rhysand getting nasty because they accepted each other as mates. They are now mated, not like by the priestesses or whatever, but by like, you know, by magic. So there's that happening. So now they're mated, but they have to go and meet with the mortal queens now to talk about the war. And apparently, now that they've accepted each other's mates, Rhysand is like essentially in heat now. Gross. I guess she is too, but he can get aggressive. And he's trying to be like, I'm sorry if I'm like a bit much. He's like, I have to keep self-control, but, you know. Are we happy with the explanation of how he saw her in the human world? I am a little bit about it. I feel like it just wasn't necessary. It was almost like the author was trying to force as much like it's meant to be as she possibly could into it. It was like almost unnecessary. Because like the seeing her in the human world thing, him like being connected to her as a mate before she was even Fae, feels weird. And I don't know, maybe we're gonna need more, we're gonna get more information that'll make it feel a little bit less shoehorned in there. Like it's kind of cute, but it's like kind of why, you know? But hey, you know, whatever. Like, I mean, and I've said it before, I was like actively trying to forgive him. I have now forgiven him. I'm coming around. In book world, forgiven. So I like Rhysand now. I'm gonna just say I like him now. Because for this whole book, he's been good. And his softening and sort of explanation in the past chapter of like all the book one stuff made it feel a little less icky to me. Still icky, still didn't like it, but it's a little bit less icky, a little bit more tolerable. So, but yeah, him seeing her in the human world and like him sending her like messages or whatever, so she'll paint stars on her dresser is kind of whatever. I don't know. Don't know about that. But hey, you know what? They're mated now. Good for them. So let's go into chapter 56. I am curious about like how they're gonna act now, you know? Saying like Rhysand, honestly, you're kind of hoping for a Tamlin forgiveness arc before we learned he took out Rhys's family, right? Like like Tamlin is not good either, but I do also want to like, I want to come to a point where like we forgive everybody and everything gets explained and all offenses are mended. Because in book one, I liked Tamlin. I was of course frustrated that he didn't really do anything while they were in Under the Mountain, but I also got it to a degree. I understood what he was doing, and yeah, I was kind of frustrated that he didn't try to escape with her when they had that moment alone. But at the same time, like, I'm sure he felt like I'm not going to get out of here anyway. So, I mean, like, I can also understand his actions there a bit, right? So I don't know. Oh, that's okay, Jenny. No, please get your feelings out. This is what we're here for, is to chat about it, for sure. So yeah, like they're like, and this is something we were talking about last week, right? Is that the author is quite good at like context changes the way you feel about different situations, right? And when you hear something from the other side, does it make you feel differently and all of that? So, I mean, yes. I understood Tamlin more in book 1, but now him in book 2 I don't understand as well. And his actions are really not great, and it makes me very upset. But at the same time, like, can we consider the fact that, like, there are reasonable explanations for some of the stuff that's happened, right? And I mean, even in that scene where, as we've been referring to it, he did a fairy hit, where he essentially hit her with fairy magic. At the same time, she shielded herself, and we don't fully know what his magic would have done to her in that situation. Like, it's still bad, but there's some context missing there. And like, even when I was reading it, I didn't fully understand what had happened. Chad explained to me what happened, because the way I read it, I was kind of like, what just happened there? I don't fully get it. So I feel like even Feyre is missing part of what's going on, and like Tamlin's dealing with his own crap. So I'm hoping there is a bit of a Tamlin forgiveness arc to where we can forgive him enough that we can hope for good things for him, and that he is not a bad man, because he did a lot of good things in book 1. But just like Rasan did a lot of bad things in book 1, and now he's done good things in book 2. We found out some of the bad things he did were actually good things, and it's like, right? So, right, Tamlin is broken too, and he's not healing. He's not, and so maybe he needs some help with that. I don't know what the solution is there. I'm hoping that when he finds out that Feyre and Rhysand are mates, that it will chill him out a bit, if that makes sense. Like, because he'll still be in pain. It will still hurt. It will still be difficult for him, definitely. But I'm hoping it'll sort of like quell some of that like intense fire he's got about like trying to protect her, trying to like hold on to her, because he's like, she belongs to someone else, right? And then he might be like, okay, so this is no longer a concern for me. Now I can just focus on my people. Maybe that's the answer. It could make things worse too. It could. The only reason I'm hoping it'll chill him out a bit is because like somebody finding their mate is such a sacred thing in their culture that like it's the kind of thing where he might be like able to understand it, accept it, and let it roll away more than her just straight up leaving him for another guy just cuz, right? Because even if it was like, I'm in love with this other guy, that's not even the same. It's like mates you can't control so much in the same way. So yeah, I'm curious. And once again, now that they are mated, but they're in this like weird, like immediately post accepting mateship thing, this frenzy thing, where they just want to fuck all the time. How are they going to act going in to meet the Mortal Queens? How are they going to act around their friends? How are they going to act with all of these upcoming situations? Like the fact there's a war about to happen. Like what's going to happen to them then? Like how quickly is all of this going to cause problems? Right? And they did. I mean, I will also say at the end there, they threw in the whole like she could get pregnant thing, and like how they're like, that's probably not a good idea. So what I am assuming now, I'm guessing, I'm just putting a guess out there. She said she's going to take a tonic and that'll undo everything they did. I think something's going to happen. She's not going to get a chance to take it, and she's going to get pregnant. And we're going to have to put up with that. Which could be cute, but I could also fucking hate it. Because I don't like children. And I don't like when people are all like, oh, my baby. Oh, it's so cute. My baby. Just find baby stuff kind of icky, but that's just me. Yeah. Right, the birth control in this world. Because women can take a tonic, but I guess men also can. So like, yeah, male birth control about it. So I don't know. Yeah. But also, like, Rasan, wrap it up, you know? Because you're telling me they don't have condoms. But anyway. And it would be, yeah, you're right. It would be like a powerful fucking baby. Which is kind of, I think, why, like, they were meant to be mates, is because it's going to create the most powerful family in the entire history of forever. Okay. Alright. Chapter 56. Rhys winnowed us to the Illyrian camp. We wouldn't be staying long enough to be at risk, and with 10,000 Illyrian warriors surrounding us on the various peaks, Rhys doubted anyone would be stupid enough to attack. We'd just appeared in the mud outside the little house when Cassian drawled from behind us. "Well, it's about time." The savage, wild snarl that ripped out of Rhys was like nothing I'd heard, and I gripped his arm as he whirled on Cassian. Cassian looked at him and laughed. The Illyrian warriors in the camp began shooting into the sky, hauling women and children with them. Hard ride? Cassian tied back his dark hair with a worn strap of leather. Preternatural quiet now leaked from Rhys where the snarl had erupted a moment before, and rather than see him turn the camp to rubble, I said, "When he bashes your teeth in, Cassian, don't come crying to me." Yeah, the Gazak Atarak, yes! It's all just Dune. Everything comes back to Dune. Cassian crossed his arms. "Mating bond chafing a bit, Rhys?" Rhys said nothing. Cassian snickered. "Feyre doesn't look too tired. Maybe she could give me a ride." Rhys exploded. Why is Cassian doing this? He knows you don't do that. Oh my god, what a dick. Okay. Wings and muscles and snapping teeth, and they were rolling through the mud, fists flying, and Cassian had known exactly what he was saying and doing, I realized as he kicked Rhys off him, as Rhys didn't touch that power that could have flattened these mountains. He'd seen the edge in Rhys's eyes, and known he had to dull it before we could go any further. Rhys had known too, which is why we'd win out here first, and not Valaris. They were a sight to behold, two Illyrian males fighting in the mud and stones, panting and spitting blood. None of the other Illyrians dared land. Nor would they, I realized, until Rhys had worked off his temper, or left the camp entirely. If the average male needed a week to adjust, what was required of Rasan? A month? 2? A year? Cassian laughed as Rhys slammed a fist into his face, blood spraying. Cassian slung one right back at him, and I cringed as Rhys's head knocked to the side. I'd seen Rhys fight before, controlled and elegant, and I'd seen him mad, but never so feral. "They'll be at it for a while," Moore said, leaning against the threshold of the house. She held open the door. "Welcome to the family, Feyre." And I thought those might have been the most beautiful words I'd ever heard. Rhys and Cassian spent an hour pummeling each other into exhaustion. And when they trudged back into the house, bloody and filthy, one look at my mate was all it took for me to crave the smell and feel of him. God, Feyre, relax. Cassian and Moore instantly found somewhere else to be. And Rhys didn't bother taking my clothes all the way off before he bent me over the kitchen table and made me moan his name loud enough for the Illyrians still circling high above to hear. Oh my god. But when we finished, the tightness in his shoulders and the tension coiled in his eyes had vanished, and a knock on the door from Cassian had Reese handing me a damp washcloth to clean myself. A moment later, the four of us had winnowed to the music and lights of Belarus to home. Just, can they not relax for 5 minutes? 5 minutes. My God. The sun had barely set as Reese and I walked hand in hand into the dining room of the House of Wind and found Mor, Azriel, Amren, and Cassian already seated, waiting for us. As one, they stood. As one, they looked at me. And as one, they bowed. It was Amren who said, "We will serve and protect." They each placed a hand over their heart, waiting for my reply. Reese hadn't warned me, and I wondered if the words were supposed to come from my heart, spoken without agenda or guile, so I voiced them. "Thank you," I said, willing my voice to be steady. "But I'd rather you and my friends before the serving and protecting." Mor said with a wink, "We are, but we will serve and protect." My face warmed, and I smiled at them. My family. "Now that we've settled that," Reese drawled from behind me, "can we please eat? I'm famished." Amren opened her mouth with a wry smile, but he added, "Do not say what you were going to say, Amren." Reese gave Cassian a sharp look. Both of them were still bruised, but healing fast. Oh my God! Oh my God, the dog. The dog. What have you done? Hello. She knocked everything in front of me on the desk back. Pressed like 5 buttons. Me. You're so silly. You can't just do that. Oh, okay. Anyway. So hi, doggy.
Hi, doggy.
Both of them were still bruised, but healing fast. "Unless you want to have it out on the roof." Amren clicked her tongue and instead jerked her chin at me. "I heard you grew fangs in the forest and killed some hybrid beasts. Good for you, girl." "She saved his sorry ass is more like it," Mor said, filling her glass of wine. "Poor little Reese got himself in a bind." I held out my own glass for Mor to fill. "He does need unusual amounts of coddling." Azriel choked on his wine, and I met his gaze, warm for once, soft even. I felt Reese tense beside me and quickly looked away from the spymaster. A glance at the guilt in Reese's eyes told me he was sorry, and fighting it. So strange, the High Fae with their mating and primal instincts, so at odds with their ancient traditions and learning. We left for the mortal lands soon after dinner. Mor carried the orb, Cassian carried her, Azriel flying close. And Reese? Reese held me tightly, his arms strong and unyielding around me. We were silent as we soared over the dark water. As we went to show the queens the secret they'd all suffered so much, for so long, to keep. That was it for chapter 58. Or 56, rather. 58. That number come from? Alright. Chapter 57. Awesome. Spring had at last dawned on the human world, crocuses and daffodils poking their heads out of the thawed earth. Only the eldest and the golden-haired queens came this time. They were escorted by just as many guards, however. I once again wore my flowing ivory gown and crown of gold feathers, once again beside Rasan as the queens and their sentries winnowed into the sitting room. But now Rhys and I stood hand in hand, unflinching, a song without end or beginning. The eldest queen slid her cunning eyes over us, our hands, our crowns, and merely sat without our bidding, adjusting the skirts of her emerald gown around her. The golden queen remained standing for a moment longer, her shining curly head angling slightly. Her red lips twitched upward as she claimed the seat beside her companion. Rhys did not so much as lower his head to them as he said, "We appreciate you taking the time to see us again." The younger queen merely gave a little nod, her amber gaze leaping over to our friends beside us. Cassian and Azriel on either side of the bay windows where Elaine and Nesta stood in their finery. Elaine's garden in bloom behind them. Nesta's shoulders were already locked. Elaine bit her lip. Moore stood on Rhys's other side, this time in blue-green, that reminded me of the Sidra's calm waters, the onyx box containing the Veritas in her tan hands. The ancient queen, surveying us all with narrowed eyes, let out a huff. "After being so gravely insulted the last time," a simmering glare thrown at Nesta. My sister leveled a look of pure, unyielding flame right back at her. The old woman clicked her tongue. "We debated for so many days whether we should return. As you can see, 3 of us found the insult to be unforgivable." Liar. To blame it on Nesta. To try to sow discord between us for what Nesta had tried to defend. I said with surprising calm, "If that is the worst insult any of you have ever received in your lives, I'd say you're all in for quite a shock when more comes." The younger one's lips twitched again, amber eyes alight, a lion incarnate. She purred to me, "So he won your heart after all, Cursebreaker." I held her stare as Rhys and I both sat in our chairs, Moore sliding into one beside me. "I do not think," I said, "that it was mere coincidence that the cauldron let us find each other on the eve of war returning between our two peoples." "The cauldron? And 2 peoples?" The golden one toyed with a ruby ring on her finger. "Our people do not invoke a cauldron. Our people do not have magic. The way I see it, there is your people and ours. You are little better than those children of the blessed." She lifted a groomed brow. "What does happen to them when they cross the wall?" She angled her head at Rhys, at Cassian and Azriel. "Are they prey? Or are they used and discarded, and left to grow old and infirm while you remain young forever? Such a pity. So unfair that you, Cursebreaker, receive what all those fools no doubt begged for. Immortality, eternal youth. Why would Lord Rasan have done if you had aged while he did not?" Rhys said eventually, "Is there a point to your questions, other than to hear yourself talk?" Oh. Boom, got him. A low chuckle, and she turned to the ancient queen, her yellow dress rustling with the movement. The old woman simply extended a wrinkled hand to the box in Moore's slender fingers. "Oh, hey, Carla. How you doing?" "Is that the proof we asked for?" "Don't do it." My heart began bleeding. "Don't show them." Before Moore could so much as nod, I said, "Is my love for the High Lord not proof enough of our good intentions? Does my sister's presence here not speak to you? There is an iron engagement ring upon my sister's finger, and yet she stands with us. Elaine seemed to be fighting the urge to tuck her hand behind the skirts of her pale pink and blue dress, but stayed tall while the queens surveyed her. I would say that is proof of her idiocy, the Golden One sneered. To be engaged to a fair-haired man, and to risk the match by association with you. Do not, Nesta hissed, with quiet venom. Judge what you know nothing about. The Golden One folded her hands in her lap. The Viper speaks again. She raised her brows at me. Surely the wise move would have been to have her sit. Surely the wise move would have been to have her sit this meeting out. She offers up her house and risks her social standing for us to have these meetings, I said. She has the right to hear what is spoken in them, to stand as a representative of the people of these lands. They both do. The crone interrupted the younger before she could reply, and again waved that wrinkled hand at Moore. Show us then. Prove us wrong. Rhys gave Moore a subtle nod. No, it wasn't right. Not to show them, not to reveal the treasure that was Valaris. That was my home. Or sacrifice, Rhys said into my mind, through the small sliver I now kept open for him. If we do not gamble Valaris, we risk losing Prithian and more. Moore opened the lid of the black box. The silver orb inside glimmered like a star under glass. This is the Veritas, Moore said in a voice that was young and old. The gift of my first ancestor to our bloodline. Only a few times in the history of Prithian have we used it. Have we unleashed its truth upon the world. She lifted the orb from its velvet nest. It was no longer than a ripe apple, no larger than a ripe apple, and fit within her cupped palms as if her entire body, her entire being, had been molded for it. Truth is deadly. Truth is freedom. Truth can break and mend and bind. The Veritas holds in it the truth of the world. I am the Morrigan, she said, her eyes not wholly of this earth. The hair on my arms rose. You know I speak truth. She set the Veritas onto the carpet between us. Both queens leaned in. But it was Rhys who said, You desire proof of our goodness, our intentions, so that you may trust the book in our hands? The Veritas began pulsing, a web of light spreading with each throb. There is a place within my lands, a city of peace, and art and prosperity. As I doubt you or your guards will dare pass through the wall, then I will show it to you. Show you the truth of these words. Show you this place within the orb itself. Moore stretched out a hand, and a pale cloud swirled from the orb, merging with its light as it drifted past our ankles. The queens flinched, the guards edging forward with hands on their weapons. But the clouds continued roiling as the truth of Valaris, leaked from the orb, from whatever it dragged up from Moore, from Rhys, from the truth of the world. And in the grey gloom, a picture appeared. It was Valaris, as seen from above, as seen by Rhys flying in. A speck in the coast, but as he dropped down, the city and the river became clearer, vibrant. Then the image banked and swerved as if Rhys had flown through his city just this morning. It shot past boats and piers, past the homes and streets and theaters, past the rainbow of Valaris, so colorful and lovely in the new spring sun. People, happy and thoughtful, kind and welcoming, waved to him. Moment after moment, images of the palaces, of the restaurants, of the House of Wind, all of it. All of that secret, wondrous city. My home. And I could have sworn that there was love in that image. I could not explain how the Veritas conveyed it, but the colors, I understood the colors and the light, what they conveyed, what the orb somehow picked up from whatever link it had to Reese's memories. The illusion faded. Color and light and cloud sucked back into the orb. "That is Valaris," Reese said. "For 5,000 years we've kept it a secret from outsiders. And now you know. That is what I protect with the rumors, the whispers, the fear. Why I fought for your people in the war, only to begin my own supposed reign of terror once I ascended my throne, and ensured everyone heard the legends about it. But if the cost of protecting my city and people is the contempt of the world, then so be it." The two queens were gaping at the carpet as if they could still see the city there. Moore cleared her throat. The golden one, as if Moore had barked, started and dropped an ornate lace handkerchief on the ground. She leaned to pick it up, cheeks a bit red. But the crone raised her eyes to us. "Your trust is appreciated." We waited. Both of their faces turned grave, unmoved, and I was glad I was sitting as the eldest added a last, "We will consider." "There is no time to consider," Moore countered. "Every day lost is another day that Highburn gets closer to shattering the wall." "We will discuss amongst our companions and inform you at our leisure." "Do you not understand the risk you take in doing so?" Reese said, no hint of condensation. Condescension? Condensation would be silly, because then he'd be dripping. Only perhaps shock. "You need this alliance as much as we do." The ancient queen shrugged her frail shoulders. "Did you think we would be moved by your letter, your plea?" He jerked her chin to the guard closest, and he reached into his armor to pull out a folded letter. The old woman read, "I write to you not as a high lord, but as a male in love with a woman who was once human. I write to you to beg you to act quickly, to save her people, to help save my own. I write to you so one day we might know true peace, so I might one day be able to live in a world where the woman I love may visit her family without fear of hatred and reprisal. A better world." She set down the letter. Reese had written that letter weeks ago, before we'd made it. Not a demand for the queens to meet, but a love letter. I reached across the space between us and took his hand, squeezing gently. Reese's fingers tightened around my own. But then the Ancient One said, "Who is to say that this is not all some grand manipulation?" "What?" Moore blurted. The Golden Queen nodded her agreement and dared say to Moore, "A great many things have changed since the war, since your so-called friendships with our ancestors. Perhaps you are not who you say you are. Perhaps the High Lord has crept into our minds to make us believe you were the Morrigan." Reese was silent. We all were, until Nesta said too softly, "This is the talk of mad women, of arrogant, stupid fools." Elaine grabbed for Nesta's hand to silence her, but Nesta stalked forward a step, face white with rage. "Give them the book!" The queens blinked, stiffening. My sister snapped, "Give them the book!" And the eldest queen hissed, "No." The word clanged through me. But Nesta went on, flinging out an arm to encompass us, the room, the world. "There are innocent people here, in these lands. If you will not risk your necks against the forces that threaten us, then grant those people a fighting chance. Give my sister the book." The crone sighed sharply through her nose. "An evacuation may be possible." You would need 10,000 ships," Nesta said, her voice breaking. "You would need an armada. I have calculated the numbers, and if you are readying for war, you will not send your ships to us. We are stranded here." The crone gripped the polished arms of her chair as she leaned forward a bit. Then I suggest asking one of your winged males to carry you across the sea, girl. Bitch. Nesta's throat bobbed. Please. I didn't think I'd ever heard that word from her mouth. Please do not leave us to face this alone. The eldest queen remained unmoved. I had no words in my head. We had shown them. We had. We had done everything. Even Rhys was silent, his face unreadable. But then Cassian crossed to Nesta, the guards stiffening as the Illyrian moved through them as if they were stalks of wheat in a field. He'd studied Nesta for a long moment. He was still glaring at the queens. She was still glaring at the queens, her eyes lined with tears. Tears of rage and despair from that fire that burned her so violently from within. When she finally noticed Cassian, she looked up at him. His voice was rough as he said, 500 years ago, I fought on battlefields not far from this house. I fought beside human and fairy alike, bled beside them. I will stand on that battlefield again, Nesta. To run. To protect this house. Your people. I can think of no better way to end my existence than to defend those who need it most. I watched a tear slide down Nesta's cheek, and I watched as Cassian reached up a hand to wipe it away. She did not flinch from his touch. I didn't know why, but I looked at more. Her eyes were wide. Not with jealousy or irritation, but something perhaps like awe. Nesta swallowed, and at last turned away from Cassian. He stared at my sister a moment longer before facing the queens. That's her so fucking bad, guys. Can't even tell you. Oh my god. Without signal, the two women rose. Mord demanded, on her feet as well. Is it a sum you're after? Name your price, then. The Golden Queen snorted at their guards, as their guards closed in around them. We have all the riches we need. We will now return to our palace to deliberate with our sisters. You're already going to say no, Moore pushed. The Golden Queen smirked. Perhaps. She took the crone's withered hand. The ancient queen lifted her chin. We appreciate the gesture of your trust. Then they were gone. Moore swore, and I looked at Rhys, my own heart breaking, about to demand why he hadn't pushed, why he hadn't said more. But his eyes were on the chair where the Golden Queen had been seated. Beneath it, somehow hidden by her voluminous skirts where she'd sat, was a box. A box that she must have removed from wherever she was hiding it when she'd leaned down to pick up her handkerchief. Rhys had known it, had stopped speaking to get them out as fast as possible. How and where she'd smuggled in that lead box was the least of my concerns. Not as the voice of the second and final piece of the book filled the room, sang to me, life and death and rebirth, sun and moon and dark, rot and bloom and bones. Hello, sweet thing. Hello, lady of night, princess of decay. Hello, fanged beast and trembling fawn. Love me, touch me, sing me. Madness. Where the first half had been cold cunning, this was chaos and disorder and lawlessness, joy and despair. Rhys smoothly picked it up and set it on the Golden Queen's chair. He did not need my power to open it, because no High Lord's spells had been keyed to it. Rhys flipped back the lid. A note lay atop the golden metal of the book. I read your letter about the woman you love. I believe you, and I believe in peace. I believe in a better world. If anyone asks, you stole this during the meeting. Do not trust the others. The sixth queen was not ill. That was it. Reese picked up the Book of Breathings. Light and dark and gray and light and dark and gray. He said to my two sisters, Cassian sticking close to Nesta. It is your choice, ladies, whether you wish to remain here or come with us. You have heard the situation at hand. You've done the math about an evacuation. A nod of approval as he met Nesta's gray-blue stare. Should you choose to remain, a unit of my soldiers will be here within the hour to guard this place. Should you wish to come live with us in that city we just showed them, I'd suggest packing now. Nesta looked to Elaine, still silent and wide-eyed. The tea she'd prepared, the finest, most exotic tea money could buy, sat undisturbed on the table. Elaine thumbed the iron ring on her finger. It's your choice, Nesta said with unusual gentleness. For her, Nesta would go to Prithian. Elaine swallowed, a doe caught in a snare. I can't, But my mate nodded, kindly, with understanding. The sentries will be here, and remain unseen and unfelt. They will look after themselves. Should you change your minds, one will be waiting in this room every day at noon and at midnight for you to speak. My home is your home. Its doors are always open to you. Nesta looked down between Reese and Cassian, then to me. Despair still paled her face, but she bowed her head and said to me, That was why you painted stars on your drawer. Oh, so Nesta understood that immediately. Great. Oh, goodness. She's like, yeah, it's like really obvious. It's like the author did it or something, you know? So, sounds like the queens killed one of their own at some point. Not cool. Hey, Casket and me. Good to see you. All good. I'll catch you up a little bit because I was just recapping after the end of that chapter. So, basically, the first chapter we read today was just a little quick one where they popped back to the Illyrian camp and Reese had a big old fight with Cassian because he's horny. He had a big horny fight. And then he and Feyre had sex again, of course. Yeah, the queens are the worst. Because then they had to go to the human realm to go have their meeting with the queens, which they just got done. And it did not go well. The queens basically were like, we think you're lying to us. And then left, but what happened after? Because she showed them Valaris and the Veritas orb and all the whole thing, and they were like, still don't believe you. And they left. But the younger of the two queens that had shown up, there was like the really, really old one and the golden one. And the golden one left a box behind, and the box had the book in it. And she left a note that was basically like, I don't trust the other queens, and I have left you the book. But if anybody asks, you stole it. And then implied strongly that there was a murder. That the other queens had killed one of their own queens. She's like, the sixth queen was not ill. Yeah, and then Reese just offered to allow Feyre's sisters to come live in Valaris with them, and her sisters were like, we can't leave. I think because Elaine is going to marry this badman. So there's that. So yeah, they're going to leave sentries there to look after them, and they can choose to come and live in Valaris later if they want. They've got a whole system set up for that. And right now they're all flying back or going back to Valaris. So we'll see what happens now. Whew. But now they got both halves of the book. Both halves of the book. So that's exciting. Okay. Chapter 58. We immediately returned to Valaris, not trusting the queens to go long without noticing the book's absence, especially if the vague mention of the sixth alluded to further foul play amongst them. Amren had the second half within minutes, not even bothering to ask about the meeting before she vanished into the dining room of the townhouse and shut the doors behind her. So we waited, and waited. 2 days passed. Amren still hadn't cracked the code. Rhys and Moore left in the early afternoon to visit the Court of Nightmares, to return the Veritas to Kier without his knowing, and ensure that the steward was indeed readying his forces. Cassian had reports that the Illyrian legions were now camped across the mountains, waiting for the order to fly out to wherever our first battle might be. There would be one, I realized. Even if we nullified the cauldron using the book, even if I was able to stop that cauldron and the king from using it to shatter the wall and the world. He had armies gathered. Perhaps we'd take the fight to him once the cauldron was disabled. There was no word from my sisters, no report from Azrael's soldiers that they'd changed their minds. My father, I remembered, was still trading in the continent for the mother knew what goods. Another variable in this. And there was no word from the queens. It was of them that I most frequently thought. Of the two-faced, golden-eyed queen, with not just a lion's coloring, but a lion's heart, too. I hoped I saw her again. With Rhys and Moore gone, Cassian and Azrael came to stay at the townhouse as they continued to plan our inevitable visit to Highburn. After that first dinner with Cassian, when Cassian had broken out one of Rhys's very old bottles of wine so we could celebrate my mating in style, I'd realized they'd come to stay for company, to dine with me, and the Illyrians had taken it upon themselves to look after me. Rhys said as much that night when I'd written him a letter and watched it vanish. Apparently he didn't mind his enemies knowing he was at the Court of Nightmares. If Hyburn's forces tracked him there, good luck to them. I'd written to Rhys. How do I tell Cassian and Azrael I don't need them here to protect me? Company is fine, but I don't need sentries. He'd written back. You don't tell them. You set boundaries if they cross the line, but you're their friend and my mate. They will protect you on instinct. If you kick their asses out of the house, they'll just sit on the roof. I scribbled. You Illyrian males are insufferable. Rhys had just said, good thing we make up for it with impressive wingspans. Quit talking about your dick, dude. Come on. Just... whatever. Even with him across the territory, my blood had heated, my toes curling. I'd barely been able to hold the pen long enough to write. I'm missing that impressive wingspan in my bed, inside me. Jesus Christ. He'd replied, of course you are. I'd hissed, jotting down, prick. I'd almost felt his laughter down the bond, our mating bond. Rhys wrote back, when I return, we're going to that shop across the Sidra and you're going to try on all those lacy little underthings for me. Dude. Oh my. I fell asleep thinking about it, wishing my hand was his, praying he'd finish at the Court of Nightmares and return to me soon. Spring was bursting all across the hills and peaks around Valaris. I wanted to sail over the yellow and purple blooms with him. The next afternoon, Rhys was still gone. Amren was still buried in the book, Azrael off on a patrol of the city and nearby shoreline, and Cassian and I were, of all things, just finishing up an early afternoon performance of some ancient, revered Fey symphony. The amphitheater was on the other side of the Sidra, and though he'd offered to fly me, I'd wanted to walk, even if my muscles were barking in protest after his brutal lesson that morning. The music had been lovely. Strange, but lovely. written at a time, Cassian had told me, when humans had not even walked the earth. He found the music puzzling, off-kilter, but I'd been entranced. Walking back across one of the main bridges spanning the river, we remained in companionable silence. We dropped off more blood for Amran, who said thank you and get the hell out. And we're now headed toward the Palace of Thread and Jewels, where I wanted to buy both of my sister's presents for helping us. Cassian had promised to send them down with the next scout dispatch to retrieve the latest report. I wondered if he'd send anything to Nesta while he was at it. Because Cassian wants to bang her, la 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 la. Oh, like, it would be so good for them. I just really want that to happen for them. Really bad. This Cassian and Nesta get together. That would be great. And then can we find somebody else for Elaine? Like, I wouldn't hate her ending up with Azrael, although I want Azrael and Moore to get together. I want that to finally happen for them. Ooh, maybe Elaine could be gay. She could be with Amran. That would be hot. Maybe. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out about all of these pairings soon. It'd be very exciting for everybody. I paused at the center of the marble bridge, Cassian halting beside me as I peered down at the blue-green water idling past. I could feel the threads of the current far below. The strains of salt and fresh water twining together, the swaying weeds coating the mussel-flecked floor, the tickling of small, skittering creatures over rock and mud. Could Tarquin sense such things? Did he sleep in his island palace on the sea and swim through the dreams of fishes? Cassian braced his forearms on the broad stone railing, his red siphons like living pools of flame. I said, perhaps because I was a busybody who liked to stick my nose in other people's affairs. It meant a great deal to me, what you promised my sister the other day. Cassian shrugged, his wings rustling. I'd do it for anyone. It meant a lot to her, too. Hazel eyes narrowed slightly, but I casually watched the river. Nesta is different from most people, I explained. She comes across as rigid and vicious, but I think it's a wall, a shield, like the ones Reese has in his mind. Against what? Feeling. I think Nesta feels everything. Sees too much, sees and feels it all, and she burns with it. Keeping that wall up helps from being overwhelmed, from caring too greatly. She just has so many feelings. She barely seems to care about anyone other than Elaine. I met his stare, scanning that handsome tan face. She will never be like Moore, I said. She will never love freely and gift it to everyone who crosses her path. But the few she does care for? I think Nesta would shred the world apart for them. Shred herself apart for them. She and I have our issues. But Elaine, my mouth quirked to the side. She'll never forget, Cassian, that you offered to defend Elaine. Defend her people. As long as she lives, she will remember that kindness. He straightened, rapping his knuckles against the smooth marble. Why are you telling me this? I just thought you should know. For whenever you see her again and she pisses you off, which I'm certain will happen. But know that deep down, she is grateful, and perhaps does not possess the ability to say so. Yet the feeling, the heart, is there. I paused, debating pushing him, but the river flowed beneath us, shifting. But the river flowing beneath us shifted. Not a physical shifting, but a tremor in the current, in the bedrock, and the skittering things crawling on it. like ink dropped in water. Cassian instantly went on alert as I scanned the river, the banks on either side. "What the hell was that?" he murmured. He tapped the siphon on each hand with a finger. I gaped as scaled black armor began unfolding and slithering up his wrists, his arms, replacing the tunic that had been there, layer after layer coating him like a second skin, flowing up to his shoulders. Oh, like the Iron Man suit. The additional siphons appeared, and more armor spread across his neck, his shoulders, down his chest and waist. I blinked, and it had covered his legs, then his feet. The sky was cloudless, the streets full of chatter and life. Cassian kept scanning, a slow rotation over Valaris. The river beneath me remained steady, but I could feel it roiling, as if trying to flee from the sea. I breathed. Cassian's gaze shot straight ahead, to the river before us, to the towering cliffs in the distance that marked the raging waves where it met the ocean. And there, on the horizon, a smear of black, swift-moving, spreading wider as it grew closer. "Tell me those are birds," I said. My power flooded my veins, and I curled my fingers into fists, willing it to calm, to steady. "There's no Illyrian patrol that's supposed to know about this place," he said, as if it were an answer. His gaze cut to me. "We're going back to the townhouse right now." The smear of black separated, fracturing into countless figures. Too big for birds. Far too big. I said, "You have to sound the alarm," but people were. Some were pointing, some were shouting. Cassian reached for me, but I jumped back. Ice danced at my fingertips. Wind howled in my blood. I'd pick them off one by one. Get Azrael and Amrin. They'd reached the sea cliffs, countless long-limbed flying creatures, some bearing soldiers in their arms, an invading host. Cassian. But an Illyrian blade had appeared in Cassian's hand, twin to the one across his back. A fighting knife now shone in the other. He held them both out to me. "Get back to the townhouse, right now." I most certainly would not go. If they were flying, I could use my power to my advantage, freeze their wings, burn them, break them. Even if there were so many, even if, so fast as if they were carried on a fell wind, the force reached the outer edges of the city and unleashed arrows upon the shrieking people rushing for cover in the streets. I grabbed his outstretched weapons, the cool metal hilts hissing beneath my forge-hot palms. Cassian lifted his hands into the air. Red light exploded from his siphons, blasting up and away, forming a hard wall in the sky above the city, directly in the path of that oncoming force. He ground his teeth, grunting as the winged legion slammed into his shield, as if he felt every impact. The translucent red shield shoved out further, knocking them back. We both watched in mute horror as the creatures lunged for the shield, arms out. They were not just any manner of fairy. Any rising magic in me sputtered and went out at the sight of them. They were all like the Ator. And all long-limbed, gray-skinned, with serpentine snouts and razor-sharp teeth. And as the legion of its ilk punched through Cassian's shield as if it were a cobweb, I beheld on their spindly gray arms gauntlets of that bluish stone I'd seen on Reese, glimmering in the sun. Stone that broke and repelled magic. Straight from the unholy trove of the King of Highburn. One after one, they punched through his shield. Cassian sent another wall barreling for them. Some of the creatures peeled away and launched themselves out upon the outskirts of the city, vulnerable outside of his shield. The heat that had been building in my palms faded to clammy sweat. People were shrieking, fleeing, and I knew his shields would not hold. "Go!" Cassian roared. I lurched into motion, knowing he likely lingered because I stayed. That he needed Azrael and Amrin, and high above us, 3 of them slammed into the dome of the red shield, clawing at it, ripping through layer after layer with those stone gauntlets. That's what had delayed the king these months. gathering his arsenal. Weapons to fight magic, to fight High Fae who would rely on it. A hole ripped open, and Cassian threw me to the ground, shoving me against the marble railing, his wings spreading wide over me, his legs as solid as the bands of carved rock at my back. Screams on the bridge, hissing laughter, and then a wet, crunching thud. "Shit," Cassian said. "Shit!" He moved a step, and I lunged from under him to see what it was, who it was. Blood shone on the white marble bridge, sparkling like rubies in the sun. There, on one of those towering, elegant lampposts flanking the bridge. Her body was bent, her back arched on the impact, as if she were in the throes of passion. Her golden hair had been shorn to the skull. Her golden eyes had been plucked out. She was twitching where she had been impaled on the post, the metal pole straight through her slim torso, gore clinging to the metal above her. Someone on the bridge vomited, then kept running. But I could not break my stare from the Golden Queen, or from the Ator who swept through the hole it had made and it lighted atop the blood-soaked lamppost. "Regards," it hissed, "of the mortal queens, and Jurian." Then the Ator leaped into flight, fast and sleek, heading right for the theater district we'd left. Cassian had pressed me back down against the bridge, and he surged toward the Ator. He halted, remembering me, but I rasped, "Go. Run home. Now." That was the final order, and his goodbye as he shot into the sky after the Ator, who had already disappeared into the screaming streets. Around me, hole after hole was punched through that red shield, those winged creatures pouring in, dumping the Highburn soldiers they had carried across the sea. Soldiers of every shape and size, lesser fairies. The Golden Queen's gaping mouth was opening and closing like a fish on land. Save her, help her, my blood, I took a step. Her body slumped, and from wherever in me that power originated, I felt her death whisper past. The screams, the beating wings, the whoosh and thud of arrows erupted in the sudden silence. I ran for my side of the Sidra, for the townhouse. I didn't trust myself to winnow, could barely think about the panic barking through my head. I had minutes, perhaps, before they hit my street. Minutes to get there and bring as many inside with me as I could. The house was warded. No one would get in, not even these things. Fairies are rushing past, racing for shelter, for friends and family. I hit the end of the bridge, the steep hills rising up. Highburn soldiers were already atop the hill, at the two palaces, laughing at the screams and pleading as they broke into buildings, dragging people out. Blood dribbled down the cobblestones in little rivers. They had done this. Those queens had given this city of art and music and food over to these monsters. The king must have used the cauldron to break its wards. A thunderous boom rocked the other side of the city, and I went down at the impact, blades flying, hands ripping open on the cobblestones. I whirled toward the river, scrambling up, lunging for my weapons. Cassian and Azrael were both in the skies now, and where they flew, those winged creatures died. Arrows of red and blue light shot from them, and those shields, twin shields of red and blue merged, sizzling, and slammed into the rest of the aerial forces. Flesh and wings tore, bone melted, until hands encased in stone tumbled from the sky. Only hands, clattering on rooftops, splashing into the river. All that was left of them, what 2 Illyrian warriors had worked their way around. But there were countless more who had already landed. Too many. Roofs were wrenched apart, doors shattered, screaming, rising, and then silenced. This was not an attack to sack the city. It was an extermination. And rising up before me, merely a few blocks down, the rainbow of Valaris was bathed in blood. The Ator and his ilk had converged there, as if the queens had told him where to strike, where in Valaris would be the most defenseless. the beating heart of the city. Fire was rippling, black smoke staining the sky. Where was Reese? Where was my mate? Across the river, thunder boomed again. And it was not Cassian or Azriel who held the other side of the river, but Omrin. Her slim hands had only to point, and soldiers would fall as if their own wings failed them. They slammed into the streets, thrashing, choking, clawing, shrieking, just as the people of Valaris had shrieked. I whipped my head to the rainbow a few blocks away, left unprotected, defenseless. The street before me was clear, the lone safe passage through hell. A female screamed inside the artist's quarter, and I knew my path. I think she's running around trying to get to the townhouse. And this is just what she's seeing on her way there. And she's in a bit of shock. I flipped my Illyrian blade in my hand and went out into the burning and bloody rainbow. This was my home. These were my people. If I died defending them, defending that small place in the world where art thrived, then so be it. And I became darkness and shadow and wind. I winnowed into the edge of the rainbow as the first of the Hybern soldiers rounded its furthest corner, spilling onto the river avenue, shredding the cafes where I had lounged and laughed. They did not see me until I was upon them. Until my Illyrian blade cleaved through their heads, one after another. 6 went down in my wake, and as I halted at the foot of the rainbow, staring up into the fire and blood and death, too many soldiers. I'd never make it, never kill them all. But there was a young female, green-skinned and lithe, an ancient, rusted bit of pipe raised above her shoulder, standing her ground in front of her storefront, a gallery. People crouched inside the shop were sobbing. Before them, laughing at the fairy, at her raised scrap of metal, circled 5 winged soldiers, playing with her, taunting her. Still she held the line. Still her face did not crumple. Paintings and pottery were shattered around her, and more soldiers were landing, spilling down, butchering. Across the river, thunder boomed. Omrin or Cassian or Azriel, I didn't know. The river. 3 soldiers spotted me from up the hill, raced for me. But I ran faster, back for the river at the foot of the hill, the singing Sidra. I hit the edge of the quay. I hit the edge of the quay, the water already stained with blood, and slammed my foot down in a mighty stomp. And as if in answer, the Sidra rose. I yielded to that thrumming power inside my bones and blood and breath. I became the Sidra, ancient and deep, and I bent it to my will. I lifted my blades, willing the river higher, shaping it, forging it. Those Hybern soldiers stopped dead in their tracks as I turned toward them, and wolves of water broke from behind me. The soldiers whirled, fleeing. My wolves were faster. I was faster, as I ran with them in the heart of the pack. Wolf after wolf roared out of the Sidra, as colossal as the one I had once killed, pouring into the streets, racing upward. I made it 5 steps before the pack was upon the soldiers taunting the shop owner. I made it 7 steps before the wolves brought them down, water shoving down their throats, drowning them. I reached the soldiers, and my blade sang as I severed their choking heads from their bodies. The shopkeeper was sobbing as she recognized me, her rusted bar still raised, but she nodded, only once. I ran again, losing myself amongst my water wolves. Some of the soldiers were taking to the sky, flapping upward, backtracking. So my wolves grew wings and talons and became falcons and hawks and eagles. They slammed into their bodies, their armor, drenching them. The airborne soldiers, realizing they hadn't been drowned, halted their flight and laughed, sneering. I lifted a hand skyward and clenched my fingers into a fist. The water soaking them, their wings, their armor, their faces. It turned to ice. Ice that was so cold, It had existed before light, before the sun had warmed the earth. Ice from a land cloaked in winter. Ice from the parts of me that felt no mercy, no sympathy for what these creatures had done and were doing to my people. Frozen solid, dozens of the winged soldiers fell to the earth as one and shattered upon the cobblestones. My wolves raged around me, tearing and drowning and hunting, and those that fled them, those that took to the skies, they froze and shattered, until the streets were laden with ice and gore and broken bits of wing and stone, until the screaming of my people stopped, and the screams of the soldiers became a song in my blood. One of the soldiers rose up above the brightly painted buildings. I knew him. The Ator was flapping, frantic, blood of the innocent coating his gray skin, his stone gauntlets. I sent an eagle of water shooting for him, but he was quicker, nimble. He evaded my eagle and my hawk and my falcon, soaring high, clawing his way through the air, away from me, my power, from Cassian and Azrael holding the river and the majority of the city, away from Omryn using whatever dark power she possessed to send so many droves of them crashing down without visible injury. None of my friends saw the Ator sailing up, sailing free. It would fly back to Hybern, to the king. It had chosen to come here, to lead them, for spite. And I had no doubt that the golden lioness queen had suffered at its hands, as Claire had. "Where are you?" Reese's voice sounded distantly in my head, through the sliver in my shield. "Where are you?" The Ator was getting away. With each heartbeat, it flew higher and higher. "Where?" I sheathed the Illyrian blade and fighting knife through my belt and scrambled to pick up the arrows that had fallen on the streets, shot at my people. Ash arrows, coated in familiar greenish poison. Bloodbane. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I said to Reese. And then I winnowed into the sky. My God. She's gonna stab it! Oh my God! I think she just winnowed into the sky to go and stab the Ator with the arrows. Which, damn. That's a lot. That's a lot! Okay, and I was concerned we weren't going to make it to chapter 59, but we are going to. Oh, chapter 59 is tiny. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Okay. I winnowed to a nearby rooftop, an ash arrow clenched in either hand, scanning where the Ator was high above, flapping. "Feyre!" I slammed a mental shield of adamant up against the voice, against him. Not now. Not this moment. I could vaguely feel him pounding against that shield, roaring at it. But even he could not get in. The Ator was mine. In the distance, rushing toward me, toward Valaris, a mighty darkness devoured the world. Soldiers in its path did not emerge again. My mate, death incarnate, night triumphant. I spotted the Ator again, veering toward the sea, toward Hybern, still over the city. I winnowed, throwing my awareness toward it like a net. Spearing mind to mind, using the tether like a rope, leading me through time and distance and wind. I latched onto the oily smear of its malice, pinpointing my being, my focus, onto the core of it, a beacon of corruption and filth. When I emerged from wind and shadow, I was right atop the Ator. It shrieked, wings curving as I slammed into it, as I plunged those poisoned ash arrows through each wing, right through the main muscle. The Ator arched in pain, its forked tongue cleaving the air between us. The city was a blur below, the Sidra a mere stream from the height. In the span of a heartbeat, I wrapped myself around the Ator. I became a living flame that burned everywhere I touched, became unbreakable as the adamant wall inside my mind. Shrieking, the Ator thrashed against me, but its wings, with those arrows, with my grip, Free fall. Down into the world, into blood and pain, the wind tore at us. The Ator could not break free of my flaming grasp, or from my poisoned arrows skewering its wings, laming him. Its burning skin stung my nose. As we fell, my dagger found its way into my hand. The darkness consuming the horizon shot closer, as if spotting me. Not yet. Not yet. I angled my dagger over the Ator's bony, elongated ribcage. This is for Reese, I hissed in its pointed ear. The reverberation of steel on bone barked into my hand. Silvery blood warmed my fingers. The Ator screamed. I yanked up my dagger, blood flying up, splattering my face. This is for Claire. I plunged my blade in again, twisting. Buildings took form. The Sidra ran red, but the sky was empty, free of soldiers. So were the streets. The Ator was screaming and hissing, cursing and begging as I ripped free the blade. I could make out people, make out their shapes. The ground swelled up to meet us. The Ator was bucking so violently it was all I could do to keep it in my forge-hot grip. Burning skin ripped away, carried above us. And this, I breathed, leaning close to say the words into its ear, into its rotted soul. I slid my dagger in a third time, relishing the splintering of bones and flesh. This is for me. I could count the cobblestones, see death beckoning with open arms. I kept my mouth beside its ear, close as a lover, as our reflection in a pool of blood became clear. I'll see you in hell, I whispered, and left my blade on its side. Wind rippled the blood upon the cobblestones mere inches away, and I winnowed out, leaving the Ator behind. Oh, thank you, Sote. I'm glad you like it. You came in just in time to hear Feyre fucking murder the Ator. Just like destroyed it. Holy fuck. I thought she was gonna die. I heard the crack and splatter even as I sifted through the world, propelled by my own power and the velocity of my plummet. I emerged a few feet away, my body taking longer than my mind to catch up. My feet and legs gave out, and I rocked back into the wall of a pink-painted building behind me. So hard the plaster dented and cracked against my spine, my shoulders. I panted, trembling. And on the street ahead, what lay broken and oozing on the cobblestones, the Ator's wings were a twisted ruin. Beyond that, scraps of armor, splintered bone, and burned flesh were all that remained. That wave of darkness, Rasan's power, at last hit my side of the river. No one cried out at the star-flecked cascade of night that cut off all light. I thought I heard vague grunting and scraping, as if it had sought out hidden soldiers lingering in the rainbow, but then the wave vanished. Sunlight. The crunch of boots before me. Beat and whisper of mighty wings. A hand on my face, tilting up my chin as I stared and stared at the splattered ruin of the Ator. Violet eyes met mine. Reese was here. And I had... He leaned forward, his brow sweat-coated, his breathing uneven. He gently pressed a kiss to my mouth, to remind us both who we were, what we were. My icy heart thawed. The fire in my gut was soothed by a tendril of dark, and the water trickled out of my veins and back into the Sidra. Reese pulled back, his thumb stroking my cheek. People were weeping, keening, but no more screams of terror. No more bloodshed and destruction. My mate murmured, "Feyre Cursebreaker, the defender of the rainbow." I'm sorry, that sounds so... that's just cheesy. Great, okay. I slid my arms around his waist and sobbed. And even as his city wailed, The High Lord of the Night Court held me until I could at last face this blood-drenched new world. Holy shit! Well, fuck. I guess we're gonna have to find out, like, how fucked up, Valaris is now, eh? 'Cause damn. Yeah, let's do chapter 60, guys. We're making good time today. It's more than I intended, but let's do it. So, Sote, just so you know, essentially, they got the book from the queens because the Golden Queen, gave it to them. She betrayed the other queens to give it to them. And then just now, the forces of Hybern came and attacked Valaris, assuming because the queens are somehow working with them. Right? Not good. The Golden Queen has now been murdered, because they brought her to Valaris, stuck her on a lamppost. So she's dead. So yeah, the queens are they're working with the bad guys. And then they just had this big attack that they just dealt with. They killed a bunch of soldiers. Feyre just killed the Ator, whole big thing. Her powers just totally, like, took over and she just did it. I'm sure there are other details that I have not relayed here that are going to be important, but we will get to those. Oh, and they still horny. They still very horny. It's a whole thing. Reese's gonna beat all the guys up because they're so horny. Yes, there were water wolves. That was very cool. She used her water animals to kill people. It's awesome. Yeah, horny good. But he's just like, anybody looks at her and he's just like ready to kill them. It's intense. Okay. Valaris is secure, Reese said in the black hours of the night. The wards the cauldron took out have been remade. We had not stopped to rest until now. Oh god. Sorry, I thought they were going to talk about fucking again. Doesn't seem to be what they were doing. I was like, guys, your city just got destroyed. Don't do that right now. But no, that's not what happened. I don't think. We had not stopped to rest until now. For hours we'd worked along with the rest of the city to heal, to patch up, to hunt down answers any way we could. And now we were all again gathered, the clock chiming 3 in the morning. I didn't know how Reese was standing as he leaned against the mantel in the sitting room. I was near limp on the couch beside Moore, both of us coated in dirt and blood, like the rest of them. Sprawled in an armchair built for Illyrian wings, Cassian's face was battered and healing slowly enough that I knew he'd drained his power during those long minutes when he defended the city alone. But his hazel eyes still glowed with the embers of rage. Amryn was hardly better off. The tiny female's grey clothes hung mostly in strips, her skin beneath pale as snow. Half asleep on the couch across from mine, she leaned against Azriel, who kept casting alarmed glances at her, even as his own wounds leaked a bit. Atop his scarred hands, Azriel's blue siphons were dull, muted, utterly empty. As I had helped the survivors in the Rainbow tend to their wounded, count their dead, and begin repairs, Reese had checked in every now and then while he'd rebuilt the wards with whatever power lingered in his arsenal. During one of our brief breaks, he'd told me what Amryn had done on her side of the river. With her dark power, she had spun illusions straight into the soldiers' minds. They believed they had fallen into the Sidra and were drowning. They believed they were flying 1,000 feet above and had dived fast and swift for the city, only to find the street mere feet away, and the crunch of their skulls. The crueler ones, the wickedest ones, She'd unleashed their own nightmares upon them, until they died from terror, their hearts giving out. Some had fallen into the river, drinking their own spreading blood as they drowned. Some had disappeared wholly. Valaris might be secure, Cassian replied, not even bothering to lift his head from where it rested against the back of the chair. But for how long? Hybern knows about this place thanks to those worm queens. Who else will they sell the information to? How long until the other courts come sniffing? Or Hybern uses that cauldron again to take down our defenses? Reese closed his eyes, his shoulders tight. I could already see the weight pushing down on that dark head. I hated to add to that burden, but I said, if we all go to Hybern to destroy the cauldron, who will defend the city? Silence. Reese's throat bobbed. Amren said, I'll stay. Cassian opened his mouth to object, but Reese slowly looked at his second. Amren held his gaze as she added, if Reese must go to Hybern, then I am the only one of you who might hold the city until help arrives. Today was a surprise, a bad one. When you leave, we will be better prepared. The new wards we built today will not fall so easily. More loose to sigh. So what do we do now? Amren simply said, we sleep. We eat. And it was Osriel who added, his voice raw with the aftermath of battle rage. And then we retaliate. Reese did not come to bed, and when I emerged from the bath, the water clouded with dirt and blood, he was nowhere to be found. But I felt for the bond between us and trudged upstairs, my stiff legs barking in pain. He was sitting on the roof, in the dark. His great wings were spread behind him, draped over the tiles. I slid into his lap, looping my arms around his neck. He stared at the city around us. So few lights left tonight. I did not look. I only traced the lines of his face and brushed my thumb over his mouth. It's not your fault, I said quietly. His eyes shifted to mine, barely visible in the dark. Isn't it? I handed this city over to them. I said I would be willing to risk it, but I don't know who I hate more, the king, those queens, or myself. I brushed the hair out of his face. He gripped my hand, halting my fingers. You shut me out, he breathed. You shielded against me. Completely. I couldn't find a way in. I'm sorry. Reese let out a bitter laugh. Sorry? Be impressed? That shield? What you did to the Ator? He shook his head. You could have been killed. Are you going to scold me for it? His brows furrowed. Then he buried his face in my shoulder. How could I scold you for defending my people? I want to throttle you, yes, for not going back to the townhouse, but you chose to fight for them, for Valaris. He kissed my neck. I don't deserve you. My heart strained. He meant it. Truly felt that way. I stroked his hair again, and I said to him the words the only sounds in the silent, dark city. We deserve each other, and we deserve to be happy. Reese shuddered against me, and when his lips found mine, I let him lay me down upon the roof tiles and make love to me under the stars. Guys, they just can't stop. They just can't stop for even a second. They're just so horny. I know, they had to. They just can't stop. Good for them. Good for them. Amrin cracked the code the next afternoon. The news was not good. Damn. To nullify the cauldron's power, she said by way of greeting as we crowded around the dining table in the townhouse, having rushed in from the repairs we'd all been making on very little sleep. You must touch the cauldron and speak these words. She had written them all down for me on a piece of paper. You know this for certain? Reese said. He was still bleak-eyed from the attack, from healing and helping his people all day. They clearly don't suffer from leg cramps. I guess not. Like, they mention every so often that my legs were kind of sore, but they don't get... Yeah. Amrin hissed. I'm trying not to be insulted, Rasand. Mar elbowed her way between them, staring at the two assembled pieces of the Book of Breathings. What happens if we put both halves together? Don't put them together, Amrin simply said. With either piece laid out, their voices blended and sang and hissed, evil and good and madness, dark and light and chaos. You put the pieces together, she clarified when Reese gave her a questioning look, and the blast of power will be felt in every corner and hole in the earth. You won't distract the King of Highburn. You'll draw enemies far older and more wretched, things that have long been asleep and should remain so. I cringed a bit. Reese put a hand on my back. Then we move in now, Cassian said. His face had healed, but he limped a bit from an injury I couldn't see beneath his fighting leathers. He jerked his chin to Reese. Since you can't winnow without being tracked, Mor and Az will winnow us all in. Feyre breaks the cauldron, and we get out. We'll be there and gone before anyone notices, and the King of Highburn will have a new piece of cookware. I swallowed. It could be anywhere in his castle. We know where it is, Cassian countered. I blinked. Azriel said to me, We've been able to narrow it down to the lower levels. Through his spying, they're planning for this trip all these months. Every inch of the castle and surrounding lands is heavily guarded, but not impossible to get through. We've worked out the timing of it for a small group of us to get in and out, quick and silent, and be gone before they know what's happening. Mor said to him, But the King of Highburn could notice Reese's presence the moment he arrives. And if Feyre needs time to nullify the cauldron, and we don't know how much time, that's a risky variable. Cassian said, We've considered that. So you and Reese will winnow us in off the coast. We fly in while he stays. They'd have to winnow me, I realized, since I still had not yet mastered doing it over long distances. At least, not with many stops in between. As for the spell, Cassian continued, it's a risk we'll have to take. Silence fell as they waited for Reese's answer. My mate scanned my face, eyes wide. Azriel pushed. It's a solid plan. The king doesn't know our scents. We wreck the cauldron and vanish before he notices. It'll be a graver insult than the bloodier direct route we'd been considering. Reese. We beat them yesterday, so when we go into that castle... Vengeance indeed danced in that normally placid face. We leave a few reminders that we won the last damn war for a reason. Cassian nodded grimly. Even Mor smiled a bit. Are you asking me, Reese finally said, far too calmly, to stay outside while my mate goes into his stronghold? We. He said yes, but he's French. We, Azriel said with equal calm, Cassian shifting himself slightly between them. If Feyre cannot nullify the cauldron easily or quickly, We steal it. Send the pieces back to the backyard when we're done breaking it apart. Is there a way? Pharaoh calls you through the bond when we're done. You and more winnow us out. They won't be able to track you fast enough if you only come to retrieve us. Rasan dropped onto the couch beside me at last, loosing a breath. His eyes slid to me. If you want to go, then you go, Pharaoh. If I hadn't been already in love with him, I might have loved him for that. For not insisting I stay, even if it drove his instincts mad. For not locking me away in the aftermath of what had happened yesterday. And I realized how badly I'd been treated before, if my standards had become so low. If the freedom I'd been granted felt like a privilege and not an inherent right. Race's eyes darkened, and I knew he read what I felt. You might be my mate, he said, but you remain your own person. You decide your fate, your choices, not me. You chose yesterday. You choose every day, forever. And maybe he only understood because he, too, had been helpless and without choices, had been forced to do such horrible things and locked up. I threaded my fingers through his and squeezed. Together we'd find our peace, our future. Together we'd fight for it. Let's go to Highburn, I said. I was halfway up the stairs an hour later when I realized that I still had no idea what room to go to. I'd gone to my bedroom since we'd returned from the cabin, but what of his? With Tamlin, he'd kept his own rooms and slept in mine, and I supposed it'd be the same. I was almost to my bedroom door when Rasan drawled from behind me. We can use your room if you like, but... He was leaning against his open bedroom door. Either your room or mine, but we're sharing one from now on. Just tell me whether I should move my clothes or yours, if that's alright with you. You don't want your own space? No, he said baldly, unless you do. I need you protecting me from our enemies, your water wolves. Cute. Oh, that's cute. I snorted. He'd made me tell him that part of my tale over and over. I jerked my chin toward his bedroom. Your bed is bigger. And that was that. I walked in to find my clothes already there, a second armoire now beside his. I stared at the massive bed, then at all the open space around us. Reese shut the door and went to a small box on the desk, then silently handed it to me. My heart thundered as I opened the lid. The star sapphire gleamed in the candlelight, as if it were one of the starfall spirits trapped in stone. Your mother's ring? My mother gave me that ring to remind me she was always with me, even during the worst of my training. And when I reached my majority, she took it away. It was an heirloom of her family, had been handed down from female to female over many, many years. My sister wasn't yet born, so she wouldn't have known to give it to her, but my mother gave it to the weaver, and then she told me that if I were to marry or mate, then the female would either have to be smart or strong enough to get it back, and if the female wasn't either of those things, then she wouldn't survive the marriage. I promised my mother that any potential bride or mate would have the test, and so it sat there for centuries. My face heated. You said this was something of value. It is, to me and my family. So my trip to the Weaver, it was vital that we learn if you could detect those objects, but I picked the object out of pure selfishness. So I won my wedding ring without even being asked if I wanted to marry you? Perhaps. I cocked my head. Do you want me to wear it? Only if you want to. When we go to Highburn, let's say things go badly. Will anyone be able to tell that we're mated? Could they use that against you? Rage flickered in his eyes. If they see us together and can send us both, they'll know. And if I show up alone, wearing a night court wedding ring? He snarled softly. I closed the box, leaving the ring inside. After we nullify the cauldron, I want to do it all. Get the bond declared, get married, throw a stupid party, and invite everyone in Valaris. All of it. Reese took the box from my hands and set it down on the nightstand before herding me toward the bed. And if I wanted to go one step beyond that? I'm listening. I purred as he laid me on the sheets. Oh my. Does one step beyond that mean he wants to fuck her, or was there something else going on there that he's just not talking about there? Anyway, that's all for today, folks. We will be reading more on Wednesday, as per usual, starting at chapter 61. Blood transfusions, yeah. Oh, hello, new chat friend. Okay, so yeah, like as I said, we are finishing up. We are going to be rating Sote because he is live. So I'm starting that raid, but I will see you all very soon to talk more, to hang out more. It was so nice to see you all. Bye, everybody.